I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Secret Ball Stories.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to another edition of Secret Ball Stories, where I invite guests to count down a personal top 5 list in high-fidelity fashion. And we are brought to you by the magic of Zoom, this newfangled technology that we're working into all of our social interactions. And I have a man that I don't socially interact with enough. He is a lovely expert on X-Men, extra special guest. It is Ben Crampton. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me back. I thought it wouldn't happen, and yet here I am.
No, I really enjoyed our last one on the Killer Santas, which is not really necessarily your expertise, let's say.
No, I didn't have a clue what I was talking about. So I'm excited about today because I feel like I've got a little bit more, knowledge behind me. This is something I'm very passionate about as a big X-Men fan. So I'm happy to be here virtually.
Well, I thought you did amazingly well, considering it was a weird and wacky thing. And you jumped in, on the deep end, and you threw yourself in there. And I really respect that. And I like guests that are up for anything. So thank you very much for that. And we are here to talk X-Men, and you are wearing your X-Men uniform, I see.
I've got a blue T-shirt and a little X badge there for you, Dan.
The logo. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You've not come in full cosplay, but
listeners, one can't see me to appreciate that. So wasted effort potentially on that front. And then me and you aren't even in each other's presence. So it's a double potential wasted effort.
Go for it.
I'm feeling very mutant-like just
very
with
mutant.
the badge on.
Feeling ostracised? You're feeling isolated?
All of my life. That's just at home.
So what got you into the X-Men? Like, why do you like the characters so much in the world, the universe of the X-Men?
So I was probably about 12 years old, I think, watching Fox Kids, and the animated X-Men series was obviously at its kind of most popular at that stage. And I think that's really kind of what caught my attention, to the X-Men, but to Marvel as well, and also to comics. That was kind of my gateway, if you will. I've always been fascinated by freaks. As a lad, I wasn't the cardboard cutout, sportsman, or I wasn't particularly talented in any particular area. I always had that slight feeling of being the outcast. And I think I was particularly drawn to the idea that there were a collection of people that society somewhat reject, but they still kind of have that heroic, that heroic attitude where they serve to protect, humankind despite being rejected by them. And I thought that was very noble. I also I loved the characters. I think when you're little, you often see superheroes in a very kind of, I don't want to, poo-poo any characters, but in like a Superman-like fashion, very hands on the hips, kind of cape out. And I kind of straight away was drawn to the likes of, Wolverine, who was this short, grumpy, hairy, man with anger management issues, and it was just so diverse. I think that cartoon roster, especially, with the likes of Storm, probably represented a lot of what you would never have seen on other kind of mainstream shows at that point as well. This kind of African goddess like character. So that I particularly enjoyed that character as well. And Beast, the kind of juxtaposition of this big furry animal, but with the intellect and, well-spoken Kelsey Grammer-like personality. So I was drawn to so many of the characters. Gambit, he's a crook, really, and he's this kind of smooth-talking crook, and I like that, but he was still a hero, and he did still have that heart of gold. And so I was very drawn to that, and it became a pathway into the kind of comic book world. I started reading Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont type stuff. That was probably my first comic book introduction.
Wow. Good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better place to start, because again, that was probably more of a group of misfits than the original X-Men team. You kind of had them from around the globe, and you had your likes of Nightcrawler and Colossus, which have pretty much gone on to become my favorite characters. Colossus is my boy.
He's one of my favorites. My story is very much the same to yours. I think I saw it a little bit earlier because I think where I lived, we got Sky, and I was quite lucky.
Okay.
Sky, so I think it was on there a lot earlier. So I had kind of that access, and again, that led me into...
All right, rich boy.
Proper tough me, yeah. This was in Blackpool.
I was in someone's garden watching it through a window.
So, yes. So we had that. And yeah, I felt the same way. I felt a little, alone or ostracized or a bit, didn't feel like I belonged to people, didn't necessarily make friends that easily and things like that. And I think the diversity was really, really interesting, really important. You had these, they protect the world that fears and hates them. They could easily be villains. They could easily, go out and, people wouldn't blame them because of the way they were treated. They'd be like, yeah, fair enough. It could be like a Joker movie, you kind of understand why he goes mad.
Yeah.
You could understand it, but they don't. They protect the world that fears and hates them because it's the right thing to do. And they believe in equality and, and the rights of everybody to be treated as a human being, as a fellow human being, no matter your differences. You can come together for a common cause. And that was one of the big lessons to me as imbued in me as a youngster was that, no matter what, you treat everybody the same, treat everybody, with respect, because we're all human at the end of the day, whether you're mutant, gay, Muslim, whatever, everyone gets treated the exact same way, and it should be like that. So I love that, and I've always loved that about the X-Men. I think they've got such a great wealth of stories and places you can go within that kind of general kind of racism message or anti-racism message, even from those kind of early days, even though they were all, they were not as diverse as the later kind of cast of characters. There was still, that message was very much in the first few issues of those Kirby Stanley.
Oh, it's very simple, isn't it? The leaders of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King sort of thing. That kind of analogy is just genius, really.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. So you see Malcolm X as the more aggressive Magneto type, and Martin Luther King as the more kind of peace-loving Xavier type.
Both wrong in their own ways and both right in their own ways, and
change their ideas. They work together, worked against each other, and I think that the central message of the X-Men is, it's still, relevant today, and it always, I think it always will be to some level. But it's a very similar story for me in regards to how I got into comics, and I mean that cartoon series is one of the best written, best animated, best performed cartoons. It's up there with Batman the Animated Series or anything else in the kind of the 90s era of really good stuff. There's some not so great Marvel stuff as well, but that for me is the pinnacle. But yeah, should we get started, because we're here to talk underrated X-Men? Should we get going? I'd
love to. Yeah.
Would you like to go first?
Oh, you gentlemen, as always, thank you. Okay. I've not particularly got like an order in terms of worst to worst. I don't know how we're doing this, to be fair, because they're all underrated.
No, that was your last one. You did all the worst Killer Santa movies.
Oh yeah. Almost like I didn't know what I was talking about. Anyway, so I'm going to start off with Dupe.
Dupe, okay, from X-Statix?
Yes, correct. Yeah, he debuted in X-Force 116. Peter Milligan, Michael Allred, came up with the concept and the look and things. So I even drew a little picture.
That's a really good picture, actually.
Dupe. It's just
So
a
if you
little
don't know who
sketch.
Dupe is, he's like a little green bogeyman, basically.
Yeah, so he was. A lot of people think that he's kind of heavily inspired by Slimer. Kind of
Yeah, I can see
imagine
that.
a Slimer-like character. He's from the joy of Dupe. Okay, is that there's not a lot known about him. Kind of the less you know about him, the funnier he is as a character. It's almost like what they have revealed about him, I'd rather they not have, because the joy of Dupe is that there's this kind of add-on character that kind of floats around. He's the cameraman to Ecstatics originally. He's just the cameraman. It makes no sense. And yet, as the years have progressed, Duke's kind of like gone up against the likes of Thor and pretty much matched Thor in a fight here. He's kind of got this like unknown history with Wolverine, to the point where like Wolverine has known him like pre X-Men,
Wow.
and no one really knows. So he's from a place called Marginalia. Marginalia. Might not be saying that right, but he can break the fourth wall. So there is a comic where he comes through the pages or through the panel and goes into the next panel. So I think Marginalia is a kind of joke around that.
Between the margins.
There's this crazy kind of issue where Mama Dupe is this kind of massive, large kind of version of him, and she's kind of evil and all of this stuff. I just kind of love the ridiculousness of it, and kind of the way that he doesn't really relate to mutants. Dupe could have been in any comic, but he sits there alongside the X teams, and it's almost like, well, there's no better company for a freak like Dupe other than the X-Men, really. Ecstatics as well was a particularly kind of misfit group. I think
they were
so.
kind of like reality TV stars, like The Real World or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I love the art in those books. It's really kind of vibrant and clear and bold and almost simplistic, in the way it is, and I love that, and I love the design of Dupe. He was apparently created in like a Cold War government lab. That's again like another rumor of his origins. But as I said, the joy to this character is that we really don't know huge amounts about him. But my favorite kind of stuff with Dupe in it is probably the Wolverine and the X-Men series by Jason Aaron and Chris Bacallo when it started. And Dupe can often be seen like, or there might just be one moment that's really sort of random. He's having a sexual relationship with the character Warbird.
Oh yeah.
Again, it's very fleeting as a moment, but it's heavily implied. So he's this kind of like pansexual, character as well. He's got his own language. Now, if you look it up, you can actually find a Dupe translator. Yeah, if you really haven't got a lot to do in your life, then that is out there. But there is a comic where I think it was All New Dupe, his own kind of spin-off series where he teams up with Kitty Pryde. I can't remember the reason, but she can understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they end up having this weird kiss at the end. Like he's a very kind of mischievous, ridiculous character. And I just think I'd love to see that in another kind of form of media, to be honest, because I just think kids would just lap that up. I always love that mascot like character, whether it be Slimer or Snarf. Trying to think of some others now. Yeah. Ewoks, yeah, but that kind of that one character that's in a team full of muscular heroes, and then there's this weird little freak to the side. Yeah. That's the character I've always been drawn to, and Dupe is kind of that in some of the modern era X-Men books. So yeah, Dupe is my number one, Dan.
I really do want to. I need to finish. And I think I'm going to get back into my X-Men comics. Just making this list has made me go, you know what? I need to read a bit more again. But Ecstatics is one I want to look at specifically because I think that's a nice, unique spin on the X-Men. And you're always singing the praises of Wolverine and the X-Men, so I'm slowly making my way through that as well.
Literally, I miss it. I miss it dearly. Although I have loved the new House of X stuff. Really interesting. You mentioned at the beginning about obviously why you love X-Men and about them doing the right thing. And if they were bad, you'd kind of understand that. And that's kind of what House of X explores, I think. It's kind of the X-Men finally, after all these years of shit, be a little bit selfish, start to kind of think for themselves a little bit. And so, yeah, highly recommend that.
I really like the Brian Michael Bendis run. I think it was Uncanny X-Men where Cyclops is like this totalitarian leader.
Yes.
Fantastic. It's straight after kind of Avengers versus X-Men introduces us the time-traveling, younger original X-Men. It's just good. I still haven't finished that, but bloody love
it. #Cyclops was right.
Yes. I even have a T-shirt. Great.
I genuinely have one on the way. It's coming. I'm serious. I ordered it the other day. I'm saving on train fares at the moment, so it's going towards Quentin Quire T-shirts.
Magneto was right as well, T-shirt.
That's where it started, I think, wasn't it? And then Quentin Quire did the spoof T-shirt with the Cyclops on.
Yeah,
we'll come to him later.
Oh, I'm sure. I had a feeling you might include him somehow. That's great. Well, have you got anything else you want to say about Dupe specifically?
No, I just if you not been introduced to him, I highly recommend going out and trying to kind of do a bit of research because it's just so off the wall.
I think I've read that one issue where I think it's Wolverine and the X-Men, and it kind of follows a day in the life of Dupe.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So good.
Yeah, that's a really good. I think that's the only one that's really focused in on Dupe that I've read. But it was so funny. It was just so funny. His whole what he goes about, because he's like jumping between adventures and heroes and fights.
Yeah, like I rarely laugh out loud to a comic, to be honest. Yeah. Like it takes a real bit of good writing for me to kind of like snort whilst I'm reading, and Dupe often gives me that snort moment that I'm looking for. So
I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing with comics is it's all about the timing, and timing's hard to show in a comic. The passage of time in still images, and I think that's probably why. And again, with like horror comics, it's a bit hard to get that like jump scare moment or anything like that. But I've experienced that kind of a jump scare in a Scott Snyder book. Can't remember the name of it at the moment, but I think it's Severed. Look that one up. It's really good. I think it's Severed. Right, I guess I'll do my first one.
Over to you.
Yeah, okay. So, as we were saying, that the original X-Men were not that diverse. And I feel like because of that, they do tend to be looked over a lot. I did like when the time-traveling X-Men came back, the younger versions of the original X-Men came back. And I feel like those characters, I love them just as much as my favorite is probably the second generation with Sunfire, Nightcrawler, Wolverine.
Yeah.
That's my go-to kind of team, the John Byrne era team.
Me too.
But I do appreciate the original X-Men, and they've they were the trendsetters. They made their mark, and we wouldn't have other X-Men if it wasn't for those original characters. So I'm going to go with Bobby Drake, Iceman. So Bobby Drake he's kind of this fun-loving guy. Not so much in the movies because everyone's a bit grim in the movies. But he's
don't even. I'll let you go, okay, and then let me out of my cage because I will go on this one.
I'm sure. He has the control over ice. He can turn himself into an ice form. He can make duplicates of himself out of ice. He can throw things as those famous kind of ice slides that Family Guy made fun of and things like that. There's all sorts. His powers are limitless. He's in fact an Omega level mutant. I'm not sure if that's.
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's still the case now, but an Omega level mutant is a mutant so powerful that they can basically end all life on the planet as we know it. In their upper limits, they could do that. So we're talking Storm, Magneto, a few of the other Legion, a few other kind of characters like that. They are at a level where they could just go, right, everyone's dead. That's it. That's the world gone. There's a really good storyline in Astonishing X-Men where he gets like an apocalypse death seed in his body and starts turning evil. And he turns into a giant. He flash freezes all of New York. He takes on Thor and takes Thor down. He's incredible. Given that potential, he can do limitless things. However, basically he has these like kind of mental blocks and personal problems that have kind of resulted in him not achieving greatness, not achieving his potential. So, for example, his father, he grew up with a father who was quite bigoted and prejudiced against, basically anybody that was different, any race, sexuality, mutants especially, just didn't take to them. So that informed the way Bobby, feels about himself. Now, it was hinted years ago as well in the early 90s that he may be a closeted gay man, which they kind of put that there because there was a few other kind of things going on. That we had Emma Frost possess his body and do things that he never thought was even possible with his ice powers, shape-shifting, manipulation, all that sort of stuff. And this later led into 2015, the younger time-traveling Bobby revealing that he was gay to the adult Iceman, and he kind of comes to terms with it there and then and goes, no wonder this ladies' man never really had any luck with the ladies, because how can you deal with all this? And me at my age still can't kind of get a handle on it. And I felt like a lot of people were a bit up in arms because they were like, oh, he's an established character and now he's gay. And I was like, well, no, it was kind of still kind of hinted at, and there was enough kind of little Easter eggs and nuggets that was enough there that there was something there. And again, his failures with all these relationships, all these women, that kind of led to that. I think he's finally come out and he's accepted who he is, and he's never been more popular. I think he's got his own series now. He's got his own.
He's living his best life right now on with the Marauders storyline. I think he's just shacked up with I can't remember who it is. But some guy, anyway.
Yeah. Is he another X-Man, or is he?
It's all to do with the Hellfire Club, I think. And,
okay, so maybe.
But yeah, he's happy, which is good. He knows himself. He knows himself.
Yeah, and I think he's what I like about him as well. He's always a character that there's a lot of these characters that go, oh, I'm cursed, I'm a mutant, I'm ugly, I'm unaccepted. But he's kind of a character that's always enjoyed the use of his powers, and however limited they are, he's always had a good time being a mutant. When he fully kind of embraces himself, that's the best side of that character, I find. And he was, when he wasn't an X-Man, he was still a big team player. He was in the Champions, the original Champions. He was in a version of the Defenders with Beast and Angel. He's a huge team player.
Spider-Man and Friends.
Yes, Spider-Man's Amazing Friends. Totally forgot. Yeah. I mean, he's a huge character, very popular. He's well known. He's not exact. I'm glad that he's not there's a lot of things that he could be like a carbon copy of the Human Torch. They could have easily done that. But I'm glad that he has enough of his own kind of character and his elements and do that he can be his own.
He's playful but not cocky like the Human Torch. Yeah. Like the Human Torch is cocky, and I think he always came across as playful with his powers rather than cocky.
Yeah, I think the Human Torch on a bad day can look like a bit of a dick, but I don't think Bobby has ever really looked
even on his best day, he's a bit of a dick.
But I was thinking, we were talking about the mutants, that if they were full on evil, if they just said, I don't particularly like humankind. Iceman would be a terrifying villain. He can literally pull the moisture out of your body and create a whole new body for himself purely on the moisture. He can give you a natural brain freeze by freezing the blood in your brain. That's some scary shit,
And water is everywhere. Water is everywhere. Yeah, so
he's everywhere. He controls all of the moisture everywhere. He can do the tiniest changes, and he can make the most drastic changes. He's an incredible character, and he doesn't get enough kind of spotlights, I don't think, or enough kind of love.
Not correct spotlight anyway.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm going to go off on one.
Okay,
right?
Here we go.
Those films, the X-Men films. Okay, I do have some love for some of the kind of the reboot attempts. First Class and X-Men will always be very special to me. And X-Men 2 is actually one of my favorite films ever. But Iceman was an epic fail. They Frozone in The Incredibles is a better version of Iceman than Iceman.
Well, The Incredibles is a better version of the Fantastic Four as well.
Exactly. It's Fantastic Four plus Iceman. And it is frustrating as a fan because you do feel like they're almost limiting what kind of a fan base there could be for a character when they do it a disservice like that. Because he he didn't have any other kind of playful charm that he has in the comics. They obviously had the scene around his parents' house and stuff, but really that wasn't kind of explored enough, with a prejudiced family, really. I think the whole
is a good scene. That one scene, I think, if you tried not being a mutant, I do think that is one of the stronger scenes.
Yeah, it's great, but if you really delved into that could have got really dark and really interesting, and it is a shame. But that's where sometimes I think the X-Men would have been better suited to a Game of Thrones style series.
Yeah.
Because each character is so interesting and can have an hour by themselves, because easily, if not more, for me as a Colossus fan, it's like Colossus as a cameo in X-Men 2. He's part of the team in X-Men 3, but says about 2 lines. And, that's soul destroying for a fan because you think, I want to see him on the farm. I want to see him with his sister. I want to see him battling with, the kind of his Russian heritage and what that means. But anyway, so Iceman, I definitely think is underrated in the sense that I don't think in popular media they have shown him for what he could be. And I think him coming out is a great bit of inventive writing. Imagine if a younger version of yourself came to you and said, look, I feel like this, and you've kind of not listened to yourself for however long. Because I think to myself, what if a younger version of myself, if I could speak it to a younger version of myself and there was something that I forgot that had happened, that I'd suppressed. And that was one of the most interesting parts of that storyline of the past X-Men coming to the present. Also, it went on a bit long though, that whole thing.
What would you tell your younger self as well? What kind of advice would you give your younger
Exercise
self?
more, you fat little shit. No, no, I would I genuinely would say exercise more, and that wasn't even a joke. I would say drama's great and all, but learn how to build stuff.
Get fucking
be practical in some way, please.
Do something that does money, that gets you the monies.
Future version of Iceman in that same Bendis X series, they did there was a future reality version of the X-Men, and Iceman was like a snowman, like a snow Hulk type character.
I remember that. That was great.
That was great. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I love that as well.
One of my favorite moments comes in The Amazing X-Men, which is a kind of I think Chris Claremont came back, and I think Ed McGuinness wrote some of it, I think.
Okay, great.
It's basically a storyline that resurrected Nightcrawler, which I was so happy about. Yeah, and they travel to hell and they travel to heaven, and they all, and basically Nightcrawler gives up his time in heaven to save his friends, which I thought was a really nice, kind of heartbreaking kind of thing. Finally, gets to go to heaven. There's a great moment where they're in hell, and Iceman literally freezes hell over, and it's amazing. Just straight away, just flash freezes all of hell.
I don't even need to see that. The fact that exists as a plot line is genius.
It's freaking incredible. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Iceman. So
cool. Again, good choice.
I think all the original X-Men are a little bit underrated anyway, but I wanted to pick him out of the bunch. But yes, there we go, Iceman. So
good stuff.
Next one of yours.
Okay, my next one is Maggot.
Okay.
I don't know how to say his actual name. It's Japheth. Japheth, I think. Japheth. I'm not sure. It's a South African name, but this character was created by Scott Lobdell and Joe Mageria. I'm probably not saying any of these names right, but I don't care.
You're gonna miss
and it was back in '97, so sort of back end of the '90s, which I think the '90s was a great era for the X-Men. For me, you've got your Uncanny X-Men. Kind of international reboot, if you will, and then it was the Jim Lee era in the kind of 90s that I particularly love. Anyway, Uncanny X-Men 345. So, in a nutshell, Maggot's power is clues in the title. He has maggots that come out of his stomach. So when he debuted, there was like an encounter with Magneto. So I think the kind of lead up to it is he was this young South African kid who just had like a massive pot belly. And no one kind of knew what it was. Was it a tumor? What was it? And then eventually these maggots kind of came out. So they are called maggots, but they very much don't look like something of this earth. Each
parasite.
Yeah, each one has 3 eyes, and they look very, very odd. And it's 2 big, chunky, kind of witchetty grub-like maggots. But basically, I don't. It's an odd one. He's kind of been explored in some ways as a very pathetic mutant, and as a very tragic thing.
Character.
Yeah, so they're basically his digestive system. These maggots. They eat things, and then they kind of have to go back into his body. So they have to eat their way back into his body. And I just love the kind of horror of that. How disgusting is that, kind of giving birth to these horrendous things, and then the fact they have to kind of eat their way back into you. But then other artists and writers have portrayed him in a very kind of epic way, and he turns blue when the maggots eat. It's almost like they're giving him kind of energy. So there has been some epic artwork of this kind of really cool looking blue guy. He has like a white mohawk, and the maggots kind of sit on his shoulders, and he looks very epic. But then in other versions, he's one of these horrific freak-like back characters, really. So, as I said at the beginning of this, I love a freak show. Are you allowed to say that anymore? You are. Yeah.
I mean,
a fictional freak show, shall we say?
Freak show, yeah. These are fictional characters who would be treated.
I don't want to offend anyone that does have maggots that come out of their stomach.
Yeah, I mean, that's standard.
You see.
That's a usual thing. Very normal.
But it comes out over time that these slugs are actually from an alternative dimension or something called Rutai. So again, a character with a lot of kind of vagueness to it. Like they explored him, but hadn't really explored him. He's never really been a main member of the team. And I really think he could be, and you could have so much fun, and you could develop those powers. Name the maggots.
Oh,
name them.
Is it something like Eenie and Meenie?
Correct.
Is it? Oh, nice.
Yeah, 10 points to Gryffindor.
Yes.
Which is inspired. As if you were going to name a duo, Eenie and Meenie is inspired.
You know what I really love? Mutants that are born with crap powers.
Yeah. Well. Oh, I've got some crackers still to come on that front.
Okay, cool. Let's keep that going. But I love that because what's great about mutants is you don't get born. You are born with these powers. You don't.
Not your choice, is it?
It's not like an accident or anything. You just get whatever you get. So sometimes it could be that you're more hairy than, or it could be that you have an extra toe. It could be as simple as that, or that you throw up acidic vomit every time you see a girl. It could be anything like that. And it's just.
Have you just described yourself?
I have, yes. That's my superpower.
Because you're hairy and with girls.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm the outsider again.
But that's life, isn't it? You don't choose. A little transgender, black kid does not choose those things.
Exactly.
And it's about. Obviously, the world kind of not necessarily loving you for who you are, and they should, and I think in the X-Men comics, that's just constantly explored, isn't it? That sort of thing, really.
I know they introduced a drag queen X-Man recently, I think, in the last few years. Very much like a RuPaul type. But I've not read any issues with them in as of yet. Fairly recent. The gay community absolutely love the X-Men. There's a huge gay fan base for the X-Men as well. For all groups of people, can identify on some level, whether you're Jewish or what have you, with these characters and with these same issues that they deal with day in and day out. Always good. But I really also have you ever read his death? Have you ever read the story where he dies?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, because did he get depowered in?
I believe,
the whole house.
After M-Day, he gets depowered, and in the Weapon X series, Mr. Sinister is running like a concentration camp for mutants.
Yeah,
and obviously, like you said, he's been played as a bit of a joke and played as this kind of tragic figure. And in this, he's very much a tragic figure because he's all the while he's in this concentration camp. He's trying to protect these really young kids, these 2 really young mutants that have been taken from their family. And then in the end, he basically gets exterminated by, Mr. Sinister's kind of mutant extermination team. He's doing all these experiments and stuff. And he's running the place, and he almost kind of walks into. It's very much like Auschwitz. There's a lot of kind of Auschwitz type visuals, and it's really a kind of heartbreaking story and a heartbreaking end to that character. I'm not sure if they brought him back or resurrected him.
He's there, mate. They're all fucking back. I've seen him in the background of some of the panels on Krakoa's doing its thing at the moment.
Okay, so
I won't spoil too much about House of X, but
please don't. So I'll definitely read it. But yeah, I
think people will get over the fact I'm spoiling that Maggot is in the background somewhere.
Yeah,
you'll have people messaging you like, "Hello, Dan. My name's James. I'm a massive Maggot fan, and you've spoiled everything."
How dare you?
Yours sincerely.
Well, I'm going to crack on with mine now.
Please do. Yeah.
I'm going to choose a villain, an unrated X-Men villain, and I'm going to go with Amal Farouk, the Shadow King. So this is a mutant so sleazily selfish and slovenly evil that he is the main singular reason that Charles Xavier formed the X-Men. He is the inspiration beyond all the prejudice and everything else. Charles Xavier encountered this guy in Cairo. He was running a child slavery ring. He was like a kingpin. He's this fat, horrible character who just lives off of excess and takes advantage of people's deepest, darkest fears. Apparently he claims to be a multiversal psychic entity which was born from the very first nightmare. I'm not sure how true that is, but again, he claims to be. But what he does...
I was going to say, what's that in layman's terms?
Yeah, good point. I think it's just like an evil kind of non-physical evil being. Let's say that. So he basically meets Xavier back in the, I think it's 30s, 40s or something, however it was back in the day when they created it. And he basically says, Storm pickpockets Xavier, and then he runs after her, and he realizes that there's another mutant of a similar power set nearby. And Shadow King's like, look, I basically run Cairo. You can be like me, join me, and we could take over the world, and we can have all the food and all the stuff and all the money and power we could ever dream of. And he's like, well, no, that's wrong, and you're taking advantage of these people. You've got child slaves, God knows what else you're fucking doing with these children. You are absolute evil. So then they journey to the astral plane and battle on a kind of in a psychic kind of way. They're creating like gladiatorial armor and weapons. They're clashing, and Xavier manages to not only banish the Shadow King to this plane, he kills his human host body, and literally Xavier does not blink an eye when he does this, because he goes, this guy's absolute evil. There's some villains out there like Magneto are quite sympathetic, and I really do appreciate a sympathetic villain, but I also like a villain who's just pure fucking evil, and he just goes to town, because you're just like, doesn't matter, he's just evil. He's evil for the sake of evil, but I don't mind that sometimes. Sometimes you need that. You need somebody who's just pure evil, just like, the embodiment of evil. And the Shadow King is absolutely that. But yeah, he manages obviously to escape, and he attacks Xavier again and takes advantage of the X-Men, possesses a lot of the X-Men. He quite likes his food, the Shadow King. So when he possesses a body, he likes to eat and stuff. So when those host bodies eat, they become like horribly obese, like, because he just loves to and like I said, he's like the embodiment of kind of sloth, and he will just keep eating. He possessed Karma, who's one of the New Mutants, and he ate so much that she became morbidly obese to a point where she could barely even stand up or do anything. And
poor excuse.
And again, he took advantage of her power to possess people as well, so he could possess multiple people. I think he kind of internalized that power as well. But he's an evil bastard. Also, during the Muir Island saga in the 90s, this is the storyline that kind of reunited X-Factor, X-Men all back together again. He was battling Xavier on the astral plane again, and he caused him so much damage, much like Freddy Krueger, He damaged his legs on the astral plane, and that crippled him again in real life, because at this point he'd learned to walk again. Massive kick in the fucking balls for Xavier. And then he basically lobotomized Xavier's son, Legion. Yeah, just likes to fuck up people's lives. He is one evil bastard. He kind of feeds off these negative emotions, fear and hate and all that. So he's basically exactly what the X-Men is fighting against, all this kind of prejudice and hate and fear. He's almost a literal embodiment of that. And without the Shadow King, we wouldn't have X-Men, effectively, because he is the very first evil mutant that Xavier ever encountered. There's a really good storyline for Storm, because Storm, obviously, he's kind of her kind of supervillain as well, in a way, especially in the animated series. They made out that she was a very much like, he was an evil guy and very much linked into her. And he basically takes control when she's married to the Black Panther. He takes control of not only the X-Men, but all of Wakanda and the Black Panther. And Storm has to fight everybody by herself. A really good storyline. Highly recommend that. One of Storm's better storylines, kind of solo stories.
Is that a Black Panther comic or an X-Men?
No, it's called
comic?
X-Men Worlds Apart. It's called. You can
I
find
shall
it.
look
It's
that up.
great artwork, really good storyline, great villain, all good shit. Storm's amazing. She handles herself pretty well. And she
Standard.
But yeah, are you a fan of the Shadow King?
Yeah, I've always pictured Omid Jahali playing.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
With because the kind of Shadow King imagery I always remember is that kind of repulsive fat guy with the kind of little red circular glasses and the fez.
Yeah, he's got.
So
the armored kind of like big teeth, kind of demonic look he has as well. I quite like.
Yeah, I can't say I'm hugely into him. I do like a physical enemy,
physical threat. Yeah.
But obviously, the repercussions of what he does on said psychic planes and things like that is always kind of felt throughout. But it's never been a character that kind of visually, or kind of storyline wise I've been that drawn to. But it's a good choice in terms of like. I don't think a lot of people would know about the Shadow King.
No.
And yet he is, as you say, integral to the X-Men forming and to Xavier's story. So that's surprising in itself, isn't it? So
exactly right. So that's all I've got to say about the Shadow King. What's your next one?
Beak.
Okay.
Yes.
I can see a theme with all of your X-Men.
Yeah, as I said, I'm drawn to these people that might not look like they can just pop to the shops.
Not conventional.
Yeah.
Homo sapien look.
Yeah. So for those that are not familiar with Beak, it's also known as Barnell or Barry Bohusk. He's from Holland originally.
Is he?
Which
I didn't know.
Yeah, I never kind of read him as this kind of Dutch guy, but he is from Holland. Created by Grant Morrison and Ethan Van Sciver. X-Men 117 was his debut, and again he's one of those kind of backdrop characters that has had the odd story, but he's never necessarily been kind of forefront within the X-Men team. He does form a kind of a relationship with Angel Salvador.
Yeah.
And they're kind of one of the X-Men shack-ups, long-term shack-ups. There's not many of them. There's a lot of one-night shack-ups, but these two made kids, got married and settled down, so to speak. Fun fact, because of Angel Salvador's kind of fairy-like powers or whatever she's got, wings and stuff, and Beak, clues in the title, she laid eggs for their children. Their children were hatched.
Wow.
Which I love. They were both depowered on M Day, but then there was like a little thing where he got a suit and he served with the new Warriors.
Oh, but I remember that. Yeah.
I didn't love that stage because the joy for me of Beak is visually this person that is monstrous. Really, he's got the face of a shaven chicken. And that the kind of horror and the fun that you can have with that in terms of artwork, very similar to Maggot as well. in that sense. Yeah, there was, I think sometimes there's a bit confusion because there was a series that was set on Earth 15104 or whatever it is, where his grandson is, so there's some lovely artwork with like Wolverine, and I think there was a Sentinel on the team that was like controlled by someone. And then there was like an eagle guy, like a hench eagle guy. So in that reality, he is the grandson of Beak, but he's actually called Tito. And he looks like this kind of eagle humanoid. Beak does not look like that. He is meek and pathetic looking. He's kind of got, bowed-like arms, almost, like a bird, but then human in the sense that he's got fingers and stuff, but then he has the horrible kind of bird-like feathers coming off his elbows. And I just love visually. And I like the way he's written. There's this period within, I think it was New X-Men, the Grant Morrison stuff, where I never know, again, how to pronounce this. Is it Zorn? XORN?
I think you said Zorn.
Yeah, where Zorn kind of teaches like a side group, almost like secretly, at the back of the mansion, he's secretly teaching and taking this group under his wings. And that group is formed of, the most misfits, within the school. So your Hernan Globs, your Beaks, and the likes. Yeah, particularly drawn to that character. His powers are, you said it earlier, and I said I was going to have some characters like this. They're pretty rubbish, really, in the scheme of things. He's got good sight and a bit of flight, like a bit of flight. It's not even
like a duck.
Yeah, kind of like get from A to B if B's across the road. So, but those characters interest me a lot more than the, super powered kind of entities. I'm a lot more interested within those kind of almost Frankenstein-like qualities. Those characters that appear monstrous, and yet they're very endearing and they're very caring and they're soft and good-natured and sensitive. And Beak is one of those prime characters, really. And to be honest, I've got another character coming up in a bit that is very, very similar. And I don't know, for me as a reader, I've always been drawn to that. Maybe it's because I am a bit Frankenstein-like in that sense that I probably look like you don't want to approach me, but then really, I cry to Homeward Bound. So there you go.
Who doesn't? I did a top 5 movie dogs. You should check out that podcast. If you like Homeward Bound.
Was it Shadow, or who made it onto that? Shadow
I
or
don't want to
Chance?
spoil it, so you'll have to listen.
Oh, okay.
I did bad dogs. There was a list of good dogs and bad dogs. So
okay.
So,
all good dogs.
Mine are very bad, some of them. But yeah, I like Beak. I think Beak is it's one of these characters that is a character that has a strong character, and it doesn't matter about the powers, and it doesn't matter about the abilities, because if I remember rightly, in the finale of the Grant Morrison run, he kind of galvanizes everybody and convinces everybody to get their second wind and to fight back against Magneto, who was at the time pretending to be Zord.
He was the cheerleader, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he convinced even these stalwart X-Men, Wolverine, Cyclops, to it got them into the spirit of things, and they went and they defeated Magneto, and they did it. They succeeded, and it was almost off the back of what Beak said and his experience with the X-Men. He, wants to make the difference. He doesn't have the abilities, he doesn't have the powers, but almost that doesn't even matter. It doesn't even make that much of a difference. There are great X-Men with crap powers. There always will be, because that's the point of the X-Men. But I think that's a very good choice as well.
Thank you very much, sir.
Fantastic.
I always seek your approval.
Always seeking approval. What do you like?
Next,
I'm going to go with Magic. Iliana Rasputin.
She's not underrated in my world, I'll tell you that. She's
there we
top
go.
of my ratings.
Now, I've included 2 New Mutants on my list, because I feel like there's a lot of hate for this upcoming New Mutants movie. And the New Mutants outsold the X-Men in the 80s. They were, in my opinion, the better of the 2 mutant comic books that were being written at that time by Chris Claremont. They were darker, they were more interesting, the characters were fresher, the stories were better written, the artwork was better as well. You got Bill Sienkiewicz on it. The new film coming out, it's been dogged by a lot of people like, oh, horror, I don't know, horror X-Men. I'm like, what a great idea. What something new and interesting to do with the X-Men, and some great characters to do it with as well. Yeah, it's been, sadly, due to the buy-in of Fox, has been a bit, knocked back. It's potentially been re-edited, but now apparently the original version is going to go ahead, and then coronavirus has knocked it back yet again. It's been knocked back 3 or 4 times.
Oh, it's
and
ridiculous.
People are saying it's cursed, but these characters are great, and I think the film needs to be given a chance. Yeah, it's going to be a one-off. There's probably not going to be any kind of sequels or anything to it, but I'm looking forward to a mutant-based horror story with some of my favorite X-Men characters in it.
Me too.
Right? And I think she's going to play, I think Anna Taylor-Joy plays her, I believe her name is, the actress. And I think she's going to be absolutely fantastic.
From what I've seen in the trailer, she's got that kind of, she's committing to that Russian accent. She's committing to that kind of dark sensibility that Magic has.
A bit disturbed.
So I'm looking forward to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a swan song for this old X-Men franchise, and maybe we'll get something that's a bit more streamlined, a bit more, defined in continuity. But, I went to see Dark Phoenix. It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, but it wasn't great either.
It's pretty bad, though.
It was pretty bad, but I kind of went, okay, the third act's pretty good, but there's moments. But yeah, it still wasn't what I wanted. But I had to see it for those reasons. So Iliana Rasputin, started off as quite a small character, just kind of related to Colossus. Kind of, he's the little girl, because he jumps in front of the tractor and saves her from being run over, and that's when his powers first kind of show. She was kidnapped by an evil demon called Belasco, and basically he abducted her because of her pure soul and wanted to use her pure soul and corrupt it in order to release the elder gods, kind of very Lovecraftian kind of characters that would, absorb Earth, destroy it, take it over, same old shit. And he's
goblins in the streets.
Yeah, exactly. Not
that
unlike
kind of thing.
Not unlike the crossover that the X-Men did called Inferno. Wow.
She has some lovely, horse-like hooves in that.
Goat demon-esque Dark Child persona. But yeah, so in this kind of, she was taken away to Limbo. Now, time passes differently in Limbo than it does in the real world. So she spent a good few years being hounded, abused, taught black and white magic. There was alternative versions of the X-Men in there, so like an evil Nightcrawler, her brother was dead, Storm was a witch, Shadowcat was like a cat person, loads of crazy stuff going on there. There's a little mini-series called Magic, I believe. Chris Claremont wrote, and John Boschema, I think, does the art. And it tells a kind of story of her times in Limbo. But she manages to kill Belasco, or banish Belasco, and takes over Limbo after her soul has been partially corrupted. She creates this amazing soul sword, which is a big, eldritch armor and sword that she uses, all the magical abilities. Yes, very metal, very hardcore. And she takes over Limbo. She controls Limbo. She runs that shit. And then eventually she comes back into the real world. But only a few seconds have passed. So she was 5, 6 or something, 7. And then she comes out and she's 13 years of age and lived, a life of abuse and horrific things she's seen in her small lifetime. And she joins the New Mutants. And she becomes she's basically the most powerful member of the New Mutants. She has these teleporting discs that take her in and out of Limbo, and she just grows in power. And she's the main kind of, she's like the quarterback of the group. She's the MVP of the group. All the characters are great and have their own abilities, but she's the one they kind of depend on more than most. And because of her time in the kind of Limbo, she's become quite dark, cold, unemotional. She's lost part of her soul, so you can't really blame her. She just kind of, as time goes on, that corruption gets worse and creates this kind of demonic dark child persona. But during the Inferno storyline, she manages to kind of banish that part of herself, and it kind of reverts her back to her childlike state. But she kind of still has all the memories of stuff that's gone on, but she's a child again, which is a bit weird. Her life is not great. It doesn't have a lot of happy moments, but she gets the legacy virus, which is kind of a mutant version of kind of HIV and AIDS that they had for a while in the kind of 90s up until the late 90s, where Colossus...
Or Corona.
Or Corona, yeah. A bit like Corona. Yeah, Colossus sacrifices himself to cure the world of the legacy virus because he is...
Never forget, Dan.
Yeah, I never will. It's a really tragic issue if you've read it. I think Jubilee.
Oh, one of the most beautiful bits of imagery is Colossus holding his arm out, and he has that big syringe in his in his right hand, and he's going to put it in himself to sacrifice himself essentially. And that's one of my favorite panels. That
it's very iconic and lovely. But don't worry, she got resurrected, much like all the other X-Men.
Standard.
I'll have her back, but he resurrects her without a soul. She's not her, this demonic entity. She put herself at odds with a lot of the X-Men at this kind of time. She forced Colossus to become the Juggernaut and to be, controlled by a demonic entity that is Sitarak. And she also stole a bit of Pixie's soul, the Welsh mutant Pixie, and she got some kind of mystical powers as well.
Pixie's not in my five, but she was thought about.
Yeah, she's a good one.
Yeah.
I really like Pixie.
She's a great one, yeah.
So she only becomes more and more powerful. She actually, to better control her powers, she travelled back in time to learn with Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, to kind of get a better handle on those powers. And in another, I think in several timelines, she actually becomes the
I was going to say she is the Sorceress Supreme.
Sorceress Supreme, yes. Sorry, my mistake. I think she's a great character. I think she's really interesting. Yes. I like that she's not all good. She's quite dark. She's quite demonic, for lack of a better word. But the love that her teammates have for her, brother has for her, kind of, it does crack through those kind of that darkness, and you can see she's genuinely loved and cared about. But obviously she's had all this stuff happen to her, which has caused those kind of shields to come up, that armor to build up, literally. Even her Eldritch armor kind of builds up. But she's a fantastic character and a great New Mutant, a great X-Men.
She really is, yeah.
Really, really well written, really well crafted. She's great. And a New Mutant that needs proper respect.
Yes, I support that. To be honest, I think Magic potentially for me is like top 10 X-Men period anyway, let alone underrated for me. I mean, one of the things I love is the juxtaposition of Colossus' personality and her personality. Colossus is very kind of softly spoken and gentle and sensitive, and Magic is obviously harsh and blunt, and and I've always loved that. My little sister can be a bit of a bitch sometimes as well. And you know what, it's that love never goes away.
Quite the same with my little sister as well.
yeah but you're their protector, and I think that's always come across. How, even though Magic potentially is more I'd probably say she is more powerful than Colossus, but he's always still her protector, and I've loved those little tender moments. And I think some of the best parts of that were within the kind of Avengers versus X-Men series.
Oh, yeah, good
with
stuff.
Him taking on the Juggernaut. And I think she sort of really comes into her own, and she almost she was best suited within that Uncanny X-Men Cyclops kind of, team, where they were on the fringe of being bad guys, essentially. Just because it was an assertive team. It was a team that knew what it wanted, and she kind of suits that. She's not a bad person, but she doesn't take any prisoners, so to speak, because of her life.
I was about to say.
And really, big fan.